Charities of Santa Clara County presents Change Lives for Good with your host, Greg Kefferly.
Imagine private investors working with the government and nonprofits to find solutions to homelessness, mental illness, and poverty. And the investors putting their money in along with the government, and the nonprofits being paid not for how many people they gave handouts to, but actually for their success in getting people off the streets, helping people improve their health, and helping people get out of poverty. Hello, I'm Greg Kepferly, CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, and your host for Change Lives for Good. Today we're talking about pay for success. And with me is the president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, Dave Cortese. Dave, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for inviting me to your office. It's really great to be here.
Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Great. So how did Santa Clara County first get involved in pay for success?
Well, I think the original conversation actually happened here, right in this office, as a result of some work I had been doing with Catholic Charities and the Step Up program or initiative, trying to get 1,000 people out of poverty here, and we got to talking. In fact, Greg, you were one of the very, very first people who came in and said social impact bonds are kind of a new concept. They're very new in the sense that nobody has really done this anywhere in the country, but we think it's a good model here for Santa Clara County. So knowing and understanding just enough about it to for me to do what we call a referral here, to ask the professional administration, the county executive's office, our CFO, to come back with a report and then eventually a program really was what followed, and here we are today. But I remember the first phone call I made to the CFO. I said, I guess we better talk to the finance department because this is about issuing bonds. Mm-hmm. And he called me back a day or two later and said, Dave, I looked into this a little bit. This doesn't have anything to do with the finance department. This is a different kind of bond. It's mm-hmm. not the Wall Street bonding. So I imagine we can talk about that a little bit more today.
Yeah. So as I think about pay for success, the image when we got it at Catholic Charities, it first came to us from Steve Rothschild, who was doing something similar, not quite the same, but he was actually trying to do a bond issue back in Minnesota. And we brought him out in 2012, had a convening at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and invited people to say, what's the area that we think, is this possible for Santa Clara County, and can we do it? And then I remember you being on the Outcomes Leadership Council of Step Up, yes. Where we were talking about 1,000 out of poverty and about outcomes. And the interesting thing about pay for success is we pay the nonprofits if they have success, right? So it's really about outcomes.
Well, it's a wonderful program, and I know the work that you've been doing at Catholic Charities has largely been about bringing community-based agencies and to some extent the private sector where there are funding opportunities and even foundations, so grassroots foundations, corporate wealth together to have huge social impact. And you've done that through a variety of ways. It made all the sense in the world that you would come here to the county and be really the first one to say, let's go do this social impact bonds thing. But it's pay for success is perhaps a slightly different program mm-hmm. than some social impact bond concepts that are out there. Largely the same. I think the difference is that the county itself has significant skin in the game, but to really kind of put it into the basics for listeners who aren't familiar with all the gobbledygook and all the legalese and everything. What this really is an opportunity for community-based agencies, corporate interests, nonprofits who are interested in making a big impact in an area where we are struggling to roll money out, to do that all at once, to front load that effort, mm-hmm. and to use all the best practices that we know, maybe not over a 5 or 10 year or 15-year period where we're trickling money out, but to load up money on the front end. What's in it for the partners, the non-governmental partners? Well, first of all, the way the program's set up, oftentimes they can get a payback. So in that sense, it is like similar to a government agency bonding to get a big chunk of money, except there we would be paying Wall Street bondholders. Here, we would much rather be paying local foundations, a community foundation, reimbursing nonprofits. And where do we get that money? The way we get that money is by saying, if we can tackle something like homelessness and do in a year what would have otherwise taken 4 years or 5 years, the money that we save in our budget in the out years, in year 4 and year 5, is going to be plenty of money to pay this program back. So, what a novel idea, though, that you only get paid if you're a contractor doing this work. You only get paid, and you can only invoice when you actually house somebody, or you actually take somebody out of poverty, or you actually achieve that measure of success. So, there's some risk, but it's really more of a private sector model than we've ever seen in government.
Right, and it's interesting because there's a risk both for the private investors. Are they going to get a return on their investment? So oftentimes that first capital in is, usually a philanthropic donation, which we saw initially. And then it's a risk for the nonprofit provider to say, well, am I going to get paid for the full value of the work that I'm doing?
Right.
And so then the incentive for the nonprofit is to say, okay, I've got to focus on real positive outcomes, and not just on creaming or doing things that make it look good, but there's no actual result. And it seems like there's a key component to this is the fact that there has to be some sort of external evaluation, to make sure that it's independently verified. And in this case, it seems like the county also, since the county has direct skin in the game, the county has an investment in this, putting up quite a few millions of dollars to make this work. The county has a vested interest in seeing this succeed.
Yes, and we've actually done cost studies. You're right, you need to look at data on the front end in advance and say, can we really save enough money if we do this right out of future budgets to make the program pay for itself? But you're also going to have to look after the fact and verify that the results really got done. I liken it to some degree to a construction loan, having come out of the business sector myself. If you went to build an apartment complex, for example, you wouldn't go to your partners and say, well, if everybody puts a little bit of their income in every year, we can start
eventually start building.
We can hammer some nails, and then next year we'll put up some framing, and then the next year we'll buy some carpeting. You don't do it that way. You go to the market and you say, if we want to build these apartments now, this year, or over the next year and a half, so we need somebody to put the money up front. And the response you get from investors is, sure, but we don't want you to pay any of it out until the work is actually done. So you're going to have to draw down as the apartments go up. So you draw down your loan as you're paying those bills for the hammers and nails and lumber and all that stuff. And there's somebody verifying that process all the time. Here, now, for people who are watching the show, instead of apartments, think homelessness. What if you were trying to house 200 homeless? And we go out to community partners and people with money and say, we could house 200 homeless pretty quickly if we had $7 million right now. And what they have said to us is, fine, we'll help with that $7 million, but no fair doling the money out except when each homeless person is housed. You can draw down that money as you house the homeless, but don't spend it until those folks are actually housed, one at a time. So it's an interesting blend of risk. Somebody's going to have the confidence that we can all actually house those 200 people, and we will. But at the same time, it's actually a very prudent risk. It's very similar, like I said, to a private sector model of construction or any other kind of investment that puts literally puts success at the other end of every dollar bill.
Right, and it seems like the amazing thing about Pay for Success is it's disrupting the way government does business, the way nonprofits do business, and the way the private sector does business, especially around social issues, right? Because the government now it's not just about the grant that nonprofits apply for, and you give them the grants that the most successful bidder. And for the nonprofits, it's not just about the, if you will, the widgets going forward, but and for the private sector, they're focused on the social issue, which is really brand new for them as well.
Yeah, it's a different model, and people outside of government, taxpayers, of course, have been critical of the way we do things sometimes, because what it seems like is the old model is that we take a bunch of taxpayer money, we go give it to a contractor, maybe a nonprofit, maybe a for-profit, and we say, go do this over the next 3 years, house people. And then 3 years later, they come back, they say, well, we tried, we didn't house as many as we thought, but we'd like another 3-year contract, and we kind of give a blessing, and we say, literally, God bless you, you're doing God's work, get out there and do it again. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just that in this system, Pay for Success, it's almost a merit pay system, and that's why it's so disruptive, because typically in government, we have collective bargaining. I don't care if you're talking about county or city or education. And when you're talking about concepts like Pay for Success, the burden, unfortunately, philosophically gets shifted to the employee. Dear teacher, how about if we pay you for each person you graduate rather than just a flat salary? And of course, the world has pushed back against that as very unfair. That doesn't work well. We don't want to have that kind of relationship with our county employees. In this system, our employees support this concept, because we're not putting merit pay on the employees. We're saying, as a team, the whole department gets a reward, right? Our investors get a reward only when we show success. And our employees, by and large, have absolutely supported and accepted this. So it is disruptive, but also groundbreaking in that regard. I mean, when have you ever seen governments take on any kind of a pay for merit approach? So we like it, and we hope it's going to change the world.
Yeah, that's great. So you're joining Change Lives for Good. With me is Supervisor David Cortese, President of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. I'm your host, Greg Kepferly. We'll be back in a moment.
Pay for Success. What is social innovation financing? It's contracting between the public sector and social service providers with upfront funding by private investors. The government only makes payments if the contracted service providers achieve an agreed-upon level of social outcomes. The history of Pay for Success. In 2012, the City of San Jose awarded a seed grant to Catholic Charities Step Up Silicon Valley to investigate social impact financing. Additional funding from the Health Trust enabled Catholic Charities to contract with third sector capital. In 2013, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors unanimously approved 2 pilot programs, chronic homelessness and mental illness. And in 2015, Project Welcome Home is the first Pay for Success project in California, with a goal to reduce chronic homelessness in Santa Clara County. The Pay for Success approach is suited to social challenges where the provision of a preventive social service is more cost-effective than treating on a remedial basis, and is outcomes-based.
Catholic Charities works to end poverty by helping families and individuals get the tools they need to become more self-reliant. It offers a hand up rather than a handout through a wide range of services, and serves more than 54,000 people each year of all cultures and beliefs.
Step Up Silicon Valley, led by county's nonprofit, public, and private sector leaders. We seek to nurture cross-sector conversations, collaborations, and solutions in service of disrupting the systems that cause and perpetuate poverty. Our goal is to reduce poverty and to increase economic opportunity in Santa Clara County. This is what poverty looks like in Santa Clara County. 10.2% of all people live in poverty. 12.3% of them are under the age of 18. 9.5% of those 18 years and above live below the official poverty measure, per the 2013 American Community Survey, U.S. Census Bureau data. Our approach, convening, we connect diverse partners to share knowledge and foster collaboration. Community action poverty simulations, learning and development series, social innovation leadership forum. Our approach includes advocacy. We engage government and community leaders to generate support for positive policy change, including the Living Wage campaign. Our approach, systems change incubation. We launch innovative initiatives that disrupt systems to eliminate poverty, including Pay for Success, social innovation financing. Step Up Can.
Hello and welcome back to Change Lives for Good. I'm Greg Kepferly, CEO of Catholic Charities, and with me is the president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, Dave Cortese. So, Dave, we were talking about how Pay for Success actually works. And as you think about it, right now the county is focused on homelessness and using the Pay for Success for homelessness. But where would you think we could use Pay for Success in? What other arenas, what other social needs do you see that this model might be useful to use?
Well, we're already trying to roll the same model out for mental health needs. Interestingly, one of the first departments that came in after you and I started talking about this was our public defender's office. Doesn't seem like there'd be a direct connection there, but at the time they were trying to ramp up quickly to fill a major gap they were having in communicating with folks who had very low-level crimes, who either needed defense help to stay out of further trouble, to stay out of the jails, to stay out of poverty perhaps, so they could stay on their job. And in order for that to happen, they needed to communicate, set up a system that would communicate with people, make sure they didn't miss their court dates, and make sure things stayed on a smooth track so they could just get in and out of the system and back, into the mainstream of the population. And that's still a very sound topic. We figured out a way to fund that directly through county dollars, but it gives you an idea. I mean, what our public defender, Molly O'Neill, was really saying is, if you give me a little bit of money each year, I could probably close that gap in 10 years. If we did a Pay for Success partnership where people put a lot of money into the pool right now, we can help literally tens of thousands of people who can't afford to lawyer up or can't afford to help themselves through small problems with the court system instantly. And that's what this really does. So you can apply it in any number of areas. Last but not least of which is, close to your heart, which is just a straight poverty approach. I think as we continue to examine what it is that causes people to function at poverty levels, whether it be the high cost of housing. Of course, we're trying to deal with that on the homelessness side, but other areas, figuring out how we can front load the investment into those situations, get them out of poverty. What that does is it keeps them out of our CalWORK system, out of what people used to call our welfare system, our general assistance programs. There's about 5,000 people in this county who are destitute enough that they need general assistance from the county. Can you imagine in 1 year instantly just lifting them up right out of poverty? Those are the kinds of exciting things to think about, with this kind of an approach. And imagine the foundations out there that would love to be a part of that, and the corporations that have enough wealth and are socially conscious enough to say, we want to be a part of getting 1,000 or 5,000 people out of poverty overnight. So I have great hopes for this, and hopefully it's going to come full circle. You introduced us to all the consultants and everybody that created this first team. Hopefully we're going to be able to enter into a big partnership, like I said, on an area that is closest to your heart, which is just generally bringing people out of poverty.
Right. So as I think about that whole issue of pay for success and poverty, I mean, you said at the very beginning, getting this with that first model of 1,000 out of poverty testing, where we were testing those outcomes. Can we actually move the needle on poverty, and then can we monetize that? Can we show the cost, what the cost is to the county and to the government of somebody being in poverty, using CalWorks, using general assistance, all of those benefits, versus getting a job, becoming a taxpayer, and able to make ends meet without being dependent on the government. And so that's really exciting. When we first got into this, first with a small grant from the city of San Jose, the first $10,000 for that, and then the Health Trust coming out with $150,000 for disruptive innovation, which enabled us at Catholic Charities to hire third sector capital partners, who then acted as the intermediary to be able to put the packages together with the financiers and the county. So it's really exciting to see this. I know we're just at the very beginning of this. So I'd like to ask a question of what sort of recommendations would you have for other governments, municipalities, county or state governments entering into an initiative like Pay for Success?
Well, you need good partners, and consultants don't always get the best rap, but in this case, there are very few consultants in the country that know how to do this stuff. And again, thank you for introducing us to third sector capital, but I'm not a broker for them, but I would say to any other government entity or any other board of supervisors or mayor's office, you better have somebody like that, because as brilliant as our financial people were here, they needed that kind of shepherding through the process by an outside objective party. And I think that validates the process for everybody. Secondly, you need political leadership, of course, and without putting too much of a premium on that, especially since I'm a politician, but let me put it this way. We talk and we talk and we talk about public-private partnerships and how valuable they could be, and how much sense it could make to bring the different quadrants together, nonprofit, philanthropic foundations, corporate wealth, and government. This does that. This ends the talking and actually does it. And I would just say, where there is leadership in government or in any of those other sectors, they should embrace this model as a way to actually really do, in a big way, what we've all been talking about for decades, creating those partnerships. Here we have Catholic Charities, but we also have Google. We have the Irvine Foundation, the Sobrato Foundation, which is one of our biggest foundations, here in California, especially Northern California. A local government with a $5.6 billion budget and 17,000 employees. It's a powerful partnership. Our Health Trust, and you know what? That's, in a sense, that's the tip of a beautiful iceberg. Not one of those icebergs that you worry about running into. This is a beautiful thing, and I think we're just scratching the surface of the potential. This here in our county alone, this could grow exponentially, and imagine, the upside throughout the country. But it does take people to, walk the talk and really put those partnerships together. That would be my advice.
Thank you, Dave. This has been just a delight talking with you, and I appreciate your support for Pay for Success and the county's leadership and your leadership in the county in moving this forward.
Well, thank you. And keep bringing us good ideas, because that's where they come from.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So, you have been watching Change Lives for Good. I'm Greg Kepferly with Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. I'm interviewing Dave Cortese, who's the president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, who is also changing lives for good. And remember, until next time, to speak up, reach out, and change lives for good.